Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming you guys with a deck profile today, going over my brand new Dual Knight deck for the new V-Clan Collection Volume 5. And yeah, Royal Paladin finally have the reverse unit in the form of Ashlei Reverse, of course. I remember this back from the Break Ride era with Corrin. And yeah, it's a very iconic unit, and I'm glad to see it back. So let's get straight into the deck profile, and I'll show you guys what I'm playing. So to start with the grade 3s, of course, we are playing. I'm only playing 3 copies of Ashlei Reverse. I've actually got a reason for this, in that the problem with Ashlei Reverse that I find is that she is only really good on the Vanguard circle, and she's not as flexible in terms of the other Dual Knights, also having like a rearguard skill that you can call on top of and get a benefit from. But I do think Ashlei Reverse is pretty good in her own regard, and she's got some really nice Vanguard skills. So the first one is that you can Soul Blast 2 and then lock one of your rear guards to choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards and retire it. Then you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and you call a Dual Knight from among them to a rear guard circle, and then you put the rest at the bottom. So this skill is not a once per turn, do bear that in mind. So if you've got the soul to facilitate this skill, you can actually retire your opponent's front row, get a couple of calls from the top of your deck potentially, and then also those calls that you're getting with those Dual Knights can help actually lock again for that skill again. So do bear that in mind. And then with those locked cards that you're getting, you're actually going to be benefiting the second skill, which is when it attacks, if you have 2 or more locked cards, you can counterblast 1 and then search a deck for up to 2 grade 2 or lower cards for Dual Knight in their card names, call them to the rearguard circle, then shuffle your deck. For each of your locked cards, this unit gets 10,000 power. So Ashlei Reverse will get really, really big. And then that power lasts until the end of turn. And then if you have 3 or more locked cards, until the end of that battle that Ashlei Reverse is attacking, your opponent cannot call Sentinels from their hand to the Guardian Circle. So this is pretty deadly, because your Vanguard is going to be pretty huge, and they can't use Sentinels as long as you've got those 3 locked rear guards, which is really, really cool. But if you at least have 2, you will get those calls for the multi-attack, which is really nice, and you're also going to get a good power increase as well. So she does enable the multi-attacking that Ashlei did on the Vanguard Circle, the normal one. But she does have that extended ability to be a central restrict as well, as long as you've got the locked unit to facilitate it, which of course the first skill does enable. So yeah, I do think she's pretty good. She's pretty solid overall, and I think she's a great addition to the deck. And like I said, it's just nice to have Ashlei Reverse back in V-Series. So really, really cool. So next we have the rest of the Dual Knights, of course, which I'll go through these a little bit more quicker just because we have seen them plenty of times. But yeah, you should be familiar with this one, which is 3 copies of the regular Pure Heart Dual Knight Ashlei. Yeah, just a solid unit. It's still used in other Royal Paladin builds as well, just because it's a great extender. And it also has a really nice skill in that you can give a critical to one of the units that goes on top of her, which is really solid, and it can actually help create lethal columns to close out games, which is really cool. And of course, she's just really good going first because she gives you that multi-attack as well. But we also have the utility of the Ashlei Reverse, which is not grid restricted, which is also pretty cool. So yeah, 3 copies of Ashlei. I decided to go for 3 of this for a reason, which I'll get to later in the profile, but I felt like 3 was fine, just in terms of getting access to it. And then we have the final grade 3 of the Dual Knights, which is of course going to be 2 copies of Salome. I know 2 might sound a little bit low, but quite honestly, the way I wanted to build this deck to include Ashlei Reverse was that I wanted Salome to be more of a finisher type card, and also she's not as flexible in terms of the rearguard skill that she offers when you call on top of her, in comparison to something like the normal Ashlei. Just because a counterblast for 10,000 power isn't that great. I know that you get a drive check, but that only takes into mind when you're riding on top of it with the Vanguard, or some sort of unit that can like get a drive check on the rear guard, you know, like Blaster Blade, for example, in a Ganslot deck, for right? So yeah. But a counterblast in this deck for 10k is not that great. We can get that from Lily for free, and I'd prefer to use my counterblast for other situations as well. So yeah, I feel like 2 is fine, and like I said, it's more of a late game card anyway, more of a finisher type card. So I felt like 2 Salome was about right for me. And like I said, with the build of this deck, I felt like the grade 3 ratios being 8 kind of synergizes with my card choices. So we'll get to that in a bit. So next for the grade 2s, of course, we have the 4 copies of Sybil. She's great. She's your best right target for the grade 2s just because you're going to get a free plus. You check the top 3 to look for a Jewel Knight, that's grade 2 or lower, and you call it. And then also she has that attack skill as well on Van and Rhea to attack, put a grade 2 or less card from your hand into the soul, and then draw a card. This card can actually be pretty technical sometimes because you could actually push a card from your hand into the soul that could then get soul blasted out and then shuffled back into the deck with your Jewel Knight recycle. So it's very technical, and yeah, Jewel Knight, it's got a very high ceiling in terms of its skill level, in terms of how well you pilot it, but it does reward you very well if you're able to pull off these combos pretty satisfyingly, along with the resources that they're all asking for as well. So of course we're playing 4 copies of Sybil, really good card and the best right target in my opinion. And then we also have the 4 copies, of course, of Lily. She gladly got a reprint from the Volume 5, which she definitely needed it. I was actually surprised to find out that she was more expensive than the normal Jewel Knight Ashlei, which was crazy. But yeah, she's very good. She, in comparison to the other Jewel Knights, can actually shuffle 2 normal units back, which is very useful, especially when some of them only do 1 unit at a time. But yeah, Lily shuffles 2 back, obviously the Soul Charge, which most of the other ones do as well. And she gets that 5k, which can help do magic numbers. And the 10k power that she brings when you call on top of her is really good when you're doing those attack extensions, just so you can get around defensive triggers. So yeah, Lily is just a mainstay, always has been with the Jewel Knights and just Royal Paladin decks in general. Really good staple card. And then for the next grade 2, which is actually the brand new one from the Volume 5 set, which is 3 copies of Miranda. Now, I really underestimated Miranda. She's actually pretty good in that basically when she attacks while she isn't boosted, you can counterblast and then her power becomes the same as your Vanguard. So she synergizes really well with Ashlei Reverse because Ashlei Reverse can get really large, and then also Miranda will be large as well when she's attacking. So that's really solid. And then also she has that second skill, which is when a unit is placed on top of her, you get to soul charge, but then also you get a counter charge if you have no face-up damage. This will really help you when you're scraping for resources for particular skills. And yeah, she's just fantastic. So now Jewel Knights has an enabler for a counter charger in the deck as long as you meet the conditions for it. But I really do like the fact that she gains that power as well from the Vanguard. So she kind of synergizes with the Salome restand as well if you stack some triggers on her. And then the Miranda thing can swing in for a big number as well. So yeah, Miranda, really cool. And the fact that she's a countercharger as well is fantastic. So 3 copies of her. Alright, and then next we have the grade 1. So first we're playing 4 copies of Morvidus. So yeah, Morvidus is just great. I really just like playing 4 of her because I like riding her as a right target to get that guaranteed draw. Just so that we can draw through the deck, get some more pluses and see more pieces basically. I don't really use a counterblast skill that often, but it can sometimes come up depending on the scenario, but it's very niche if anything. So yeah, I like playing 4 of her though, just for that draw power for the early game. And then for the next grade 1, we are playing the 4 copies of Eunice. Eunice is kind of similar in that when you ride on top of her, you will get the draw, but only if there's nothing to retire in that column. So if your opponent has a booster behind their Vanguard, for example, you will retire it. So it does punish a bit of early game there. But also you just get the draw if there's nothing to retire. So she's also really good. But yeah, she is also able to bounce back to the hand with her rearguard skill. You get to put 1 normal unit back to soul charge and then return her back to your hand. So she's actually really key because sometimes when you need more Jewel Knights in your hand to fulfill the conditions of Salome, since you need like, at least 3 calls with the Salome, bouncing her back to the hand in conjunction can actually give you that extra name that you might need for the Salome call to then restand her. So yeah, she's really key to your combos and she's just a great card overall. So we're playing 4 copies of Eunice. And then next we are playing only 3 copies of the new Jewel Knight, which is Olwen. Olwen I think's nice, but it's not too fantastic. Basically you can rest her and then put a normal unit from your drop zone back into the deck, and then you get a soul charge. But also you choose one of your Vanguards with Jewel Knight in the name, and you give it 5k until the end of turn. So she can actually synergize with the Ashlei Reverse and the Salome in the way, just because you're giving that Vanguard the power increase with the turn, which means they can use it with Salome's case, with the restand, and then with Ashlei Reverse, you can then lock the Olwen for her cost, to do that lock ability, basically, to then look for more Jewel Knights, and then obviously get that retire, and then get some more Jewel Knights for the lock, and then keep going, basically. So she's not too bad. She's got some use, and with her second skill, basically when you place on top of her, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck for a Jewel Knight, and then add it to your hand. It's not terrible, but top 2 for a Jewel Knight, I mean, yes, we are playing a Jewel Knight deck, so it is highly likely to happen, but it's also just a bit iffy just because, you know, our triggers aren't Jewel Knights, so we could end up seeing triggers sometimes, and we have to put the rest to the bottom in any order, so it's I don't know. If it was top 3, top 4, I'd feel a bit different, but top 2, it's a bit eh. But it's still not terrible, you know, it's still likely to happen just because we have so many Jewel Knights in the deck. So yeah, I just decided to go with 3 copies of her because I did want to make some room for the last grade 1 in the deck, which is actually the main purpose of the grade 3 ratios in here. So we're playing 3 copies of Cecilius still, because I think with this, it makes the deck a bit more... it has a bit more direction in terms of like fetching for the grade 3 that you're looking for, because when I was testing this deck is more of a pure version with like all Jewel Knights, I found that getting to pieces was quite awkward. And also I like the fact that with the grade 3 searches you have access still to getting your heal guardians, which is pretty important in different matchups, because yeah, the V can be quite fast sometimes depending on what you're going against, and having access to the heal guard can actually be pretty good. There's also some very nice synergy with Cecilius in that he discards cards from your hand into the drop zone after getting a grade 3. So once you pick something up, you then discard something, which could be a normal unit, which you could then recycle for the cost of one of your Jewel Knight skills. So there is some synergy with this card in the deck, and I do prefer it with it. However, if you did want to replace this with something else, I wouldn't blame you. You could put some more Jewel Knight names in the deck with the ones that I've got less of. That's completely fine. But I prefer the deck with a bit more consistency with getting to its pieces, and the grade 3 search is very, very nice. So like I said, getting to those heal guardians, I just think is very, very good. So that is it for the main chunk of the deck. So now we have the grade 0s. So of course with a starter, decided to go for Shining Knight Milius. Just felt like the most fitting one for a Jewel Knight deck, just with it, you know, being shining, I guess. And then for the triggers, it's very bog standard. It's just 4 crit with Lou, 4 crit with the Flogel, so 8 crit in total. And then we are doing the 4 Draw PG with Isolt, and then the 4 Heal Guardian, of course, with Innocent Ray Dragon. The Heal Guardian's also got a reprint from Volume 5, so that's very handy. And yeah, that's going to do it for the deck. I'm pretty happy with Jewel Knights overall. I think my only difficulty with Jewel Knights as a deck is that it's very technical and very resource intensive with what your plays are and what you're going to be doing. And yeah, like I said, the ceiling of this deck is very high, so if you are a good pilot, you will get some great results. But even on your training wheels side of the deck, in terms of learning it, it's not that bad. And I feel like the more practice, the better with this deck is basically how it's going to go. So yeah, that's going to do it for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for some more V Clan Collection deck profiles, since I will have one for... we have Oracle Think Tank. We will have one for Gold Paladin at some point, but I'm probably going to do that for next month, since Golds at the minute are kind of preoccupied in Premium. So yeah, look forward to a Premium deck profile, which will be coming soon. And yeah, like I said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is Guardian 205, signing out.